The truth is, I wanted to keep this short, but this is one of the most damning interviews I've seen. It proves my point beyond any doubt. And I'm going to pause it after he says that yes, he does believe the CIA is testing drugs. And I know for a fact they are, because they're testing them on me.
You're saying that the CIA tested out drugs on foreigners. Mm-hmm. How were they able to successfully do that?
Well, the test that got Olson in trouble and eventually got him murdered, that he spoke out of school about, was a test that took place in August 1951 in a small French village called Pont Saint-Esprit. That's in southern France, not far from Marseille. And the CIA funded Fort Detrick to do an experiment there involving aerosol LSD sprayed in the small village. That affected 500 people in that village. There were 3 suicides, and about 40 people were carted off to a nearby insane asylum as a result of that experiment.
Why don't we just explain why it was that you believe the military was trying to produce LSD? How did they want to use it?
Initially, there was a lot of excitement about LSD. The initial excitement was the possibility of using LSD as a weapon in the field that would eliminate the violence that occurred mostly in wartime. In other words, people wouldn't be killed and property wouldn't be destroyed. So you could launch a massive aerosol LSD attack on enemy troops. They'd go crazy for a few hours. People could sweep in, capture them, whatever. It sounds very naive in retrospect, but there were several papers written by the Army in 1949 and in 1950 to that effect. And it was at that point that the Army decided to go forward and experiment with the drug. But the interest rapidly transformed into an interest in terms of using LSD for interrogation purposes, thinking that it would put somebody either at ease or in a state where they'd tell the truth. They almost thought that perhaps it could be used as a truth drug. That didn't pan out at all.
I was very surprised to read 2 very familiar names in your book, and that being Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney. Tell me how they were involved in all of this.
Olson was murdered in 1953, and his murder was covered up from 1953 successfully until 1975. Only his family had suspicions about his death. No one else had any suspicions. In 1975, the Rockefeller Commission inadvertently printed in a report to the president that a civilian employee for the U.S. Army had been dosed with LSD in 1953 and subsequently committed suicide 9 days later in New York City. Well, that provoked everybody's attention because the report didn't name who that civilian employee was. That part of the story had been covered up, very successfully covered up, from 1953 until 1975. Rumsfeld and Cheney, to put it bluntly, were part of that cover-up.
What were their roles at the time?
At the time in 75, Donald Rumsfeld was President Gerald Ford's chief of staff, and Dick Cheney was the closest assistant, special assistant to the chief of staff, Rumsfeld.
What was the most, I guess I'd say, shocking fact that you uncovered? I mean, you investigated for 10 years.
Well, it's a good question. By the time I was finished with the book, I don't think anything could shock me any longer. In the beginning, I think the most shocking thing, and the thing I did not want to believe initially when I became certain that it happened, was the experiment in France. I didn't want to believe that. I didn't like the thought that my government would do something like that. But on top of that, there were countless experiments that were conducted from 1953 until approximately 1970 on thousands of nameless individuals. The Army, the United States Army alone, tested LSD on over 5,000 servicemen at Edgewood Arsenal alone.
How did they get the servicemen to agree to something like that?
Well, they offered them bennies. They said, you could have extra leave. maybe have another weekend to go home, some extra vacation time, maybe an early out. But what they were told that they were going to volunteer for drug experiments, but they were told the drug was a relatively harmless drug that wouldn't have much of an effect, and it was in the process of being approved by the FDA. And that just wasn't the truth. The drug was never being in the process of being approved by the FDA, and nobody had any intention of ever approving the drug.
Do you think that the CIA is still testing out drugs on?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think they're testing LSD any longer.
Not LSD,
I think
but
they basically, they've been through that process. New drugs, absolutely.
All right, so this is what happens. First of all, this is what happens when you let a bunch of secular humanists in the military with the neocons. Neocons used to be liberals. They have this kind of, some of them have this humanist sort of approach on top of their war hawk approach. They say, well, let's just drug the enemy and let's test it on people. And they always downplay the harms of drugs. There's one thing that secular humanists are guilty of time and time again, is they think that psychiatry is the answer for everything. They downplay the harm of drugs. And as you see, people, taking part in tests were told that drugs are harmless. Just like patients in psychiatry are told that psych drugs are relatively harmless, and they downplay the side effects. Okay, also he said flat out, I'm going to play it one more time because I don't think you people, it's important you hear this part. This part vindicates my claims and puts the psychiatrists in the seat where they need to prove themselves. This guy's the expert. You want to start crying about experts? This guy researched this for 10 years, okay? His research mixed with my research shows you that the unbiased experts are saying, yes, these experiments took place, and yes, they're still going on in our experts' opinions, based on our research.
By the FDA, and that just wasn't the truth. The drug was never being in the process of being approved by the FDA, and nobody had any intention of ever approving the drug.
Do you think that the CIA is still testing out drugs on?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think they're testing LSD any longer.
Not LSD,
I think
but
they basically, they've been through that process. New drugs, absolutely.
Do you have any fear for yourself or for your family? Because you really are making a lot of allegations.
Well, I have made a lot of allegations. It's not really allegations. I mean, the proof is there. The proof is there for anybody that wants to pick it up and read it. And if they want to pursue it themselves, they could actually find even more than what's in the book. I don't have any concerns. My mother and my wife have some concerns. But no, I view myself, I'm a historian. I mean, I wrote a book about things that happened in the 50s and 60s and early 70s. That unfortunately are still happening today. Some of the stuff that's going on today with torture and renditions, if it continues on the path that's going on, that could be 10 or 15 years down the road. That could be anybody. That could be you. That could be I. That could be, our children, our grandchildren. Who knows who that's going to be?
Do you think President Obama has any control or authority over the CIA?
My perception of Obama is similar to my perception of Bill Clinton when he was president. I don't think Obama has a strong interest in the CIA. The same as Clinton not having a strong interest in the CIA until maybe the latter years of his presidency when he was forced to in terms of what was going on in Afghanistan. But Obama really hasn't had time to focus on the CIA or any of the multiple related issues. But the CIA, in my perception, basically runs itself, regardless of what the president thinks.
Can the CIA undermine the president if they don't like what the president is saying or doing or advocating?
Absolutely, they can undermine the president. And I think the proof of that is what happened to JFK.
This part is so key. I'm going to pause it for a second. Make sure you see this. CIA still experimenting with drugs of new generation. Okay, I've proven it definitively, to rational minds that I'm being covertly drugged. But to the system that requires, an abundance of proof beyond what is reasonable to convict and for police to take action against the system Now, they'll take action against you over hearsay. Someone says, hey, he's selling drugs. They'll look into it. But when it comes to the system, okay, to the system itself, to those who are supposed to regulate the system, I haven't definitively proven it. But to every rational mind, I have definitively proven that they are covertly drugging me.
I mean, it's not I don't believe that Lee Harvey Oswald alone assassinated JFK. And it's my belief, after studying the assassination for years and years, is that the CIA had a direct hand in that.
Mr. Alvarelli, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I talk about the philosophies that hold us all down. For this clip, I will talk about racial pride is racism, comparative pride, $3,000 challenge, fruitcase drug in my fruit drink, a group that regulates the CIA that is not affiliated with any party and especially not affiliated with any secret society until the CIA officials are crying genuine tears, saying that they are getting in the way. That group will not be enough. All right, so when you look at racial pride, all right, racial pride is comparative. For example, if there was only one race, you would say my race is superior as opposed to not having any race. That might be fine to say. In fact, I'm not arguing whether or not racial pride is a bad thing. I'm just exploring degrees of racism. Now, when you say I'm proud to be white, as opposed to what? Chinese, black, what have you, right? So you're saying, we say, well, my food is better than their food, right? Or my food is great. Compared to what? Compared to dog food? No, of course you're comparing it to other racial groups. Our women are beautiful. Compared to what? Our history is respectable. Compared to what? So it's comparative pride by default. For example, good is good compared to evil, compared to neutral, right? All right, so when people, we all suffer from a degree of racism, no matter how you slice it. The racism I'm talking about in spiritual bottom feeding is a very harmful form. It's a very offensive form. It's not a defensive form. It's not necessarily the hate that hate made, but it can be. It is eugenics. It is, extreme racism. It is, I hate this race. I want to get rid of them. I want to oppress them, what have you. So, and of course, I talk about how, ironically, part of the New World Order agenda is to mix the races to a certain degree. That is to destroy who you are so they can recreate who you are. Part of who you are is your ethnic and racial identity. But on the same token, discriminating based on race, when you're dating someone, is racist. Jews, for example, are some of the most racist people on the planet because they date other Jews. Small groups of people, from what I see, tend to be more racist than larger groups. And groups that feel that they're being threatened. For example, Filipinos, right? There's not that many of them. They feel like, well, we have to reproduce. Jews, same thing. Whites, they feel like their race is being attacked. That their fertility rates are low. Okay, so the truth is somewhere in between total, race mixing and total segregation is a natural balance where man should be. Now, I'm sick of talking about my $3,000 challenge. And the more you people bring it up, the more I'm going to bring it up. If Jesus didn't exist, I would be the Lion of Judah, because I'm standing up for religion in a way that not, for Christianity and God in the way that not too many people are. I see what must be done. I don't let social norms and cowardice or anything get in the way. And of course, the lion is a fierce creature. When they say the devil is a lion, he's saying the devil is a lion of evil, a fierce opponent of man, hard to conquer, and that's where my top martial artist challenge comes in. Okay. $3,000, I'm good for it. I don't have to show the money. I'm good for it. They have no excuse. And the more they start sniveling about bitch shit, the more I'm going to highlight, yes, I am the top martial artist. Quit sniveling like dogs. And we always go for, we always go through this transferable skills. What does it mean? It means turning a punch into something like this. Okay? So, now, this morning I did a bunch of combos. They're pretty good. But I've noticed that my concentration is thrown off when they are drugging me. So when fruitcakes, whoever they may be, drugged my fruit smoothie or fruit drink this morning, it slightly affected my martial arts combos, but, not too much. I'm not that drugged right now, so they came out pretty well, pretty good. Now, the last thing I'm going to touch on in this clip is that we need a group that regulates the CIA that is not affiliated with any party, and especially not affiliated with any secret society. And they need to be more and more assertive until the CIA officials are crying genuine tears, saying that they are getting in their way. Thank you.